To order. I would like to ensure that everyone has their headpieces on so we don't delay putting them on and taking them off. All right, so we begin now with a round of questions, and it begins with Mr. Bailey sharing with Ms. Conans. So you're going to split 6 minutes into 3-3. Go ahead.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bailey, start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you please explain to me how you deal with expired stock? Is it a common practice to be sharing it with a health institution, or does it go to an online auction?
Thank you for the question, Madam President. We divest of surplus, expired, or obsolete medical countermeasures as part of our routine life cycle management and in compliance with Treasury Board policies and directives. So our first attempt is to transfer to another federal department before the product expires and to provinces and territories. And then we consider sale followed by donation. As a last resort, we look at recycling and disposal options. Once expired, medical devices cannot be deployed and are recycled or disposed of in compliance with Health Canada regulations and Treasury Board's policies and directives.
Thank you. With the sheer cost of these vials, you know, we're talking over $2,000 a vial. Why wouldn't these fridges have a locking mechanism, being a medical grade latch lock? Is that something that's been explored? Especially when you talk about foreign actors, possibly a mischievous employee. I'm wondering if this has been considered that there should be locks on these fridges.
We have been looking at all options, and we have a whole series of refrigerators and freezers that are in use within the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile. In terms of the employees who have access to the nest, it is restricted. There are certain security requirements that are required to be able to enter the facility, and anyone entering the facility, there's a record of who is in the facility at what time and on what date. So there are very careful measures that are put in place.
But a fridge door could be left open. I'm referring to why isn't there a locking mechanism on the fridge? When you go into a hospital, they don't just leave fridges that you can just open. They are locked. There's a master key, so I'm indicating to you why didn't that happen?
Thank you for the question. So as Ms. Hamzawi alluded to, there's a layered security protocol, physical security. So there's graded layers of security to access not just our facility locations, but also the area of our holdings where drug medical countermeasures are held. So there's already a layered and gradated facility.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Combs now. Thank you.
Oh, that was nice.
3 minutes.
Done, Mr. Bailey.
Dead.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So I guess in a few sentences, how will you prevent this from happening again?
So this was a one-time incident. It has not occurred again. It is not a regular occurrence. We've looked back over the record. We couldn't actually identify another time where this had occurred. There were a number of factors at play in terms of this particular instance. An investigation was undertaken, and we've looked at, we have developed an action plan, which is largely complete. In terms of what has not been completed, includes an interim modernized temperature monitoring system. We have interim measures now in place in terms of how we review and monitor the temperature, but temperature in these.
I was just, excuse me, just quickly, it wasn't up to a modernized standard. We weren't at, I mean, you would think that we would be using the most modern equipment to begin with for something this important to Canadians.
So Absolutely. We are using modernized equipment, but in terms of our updated standard operating procedures, we're adding, we're in belts and suspenders and another layer of belts and suspenders just to make sure that we avoid any replication in the future.
Okay, Ms. Hamwazi, when you have, or anyone who would like to answer this, when you have a $20 million loss, how is there no one held accountable? You mentioned that publicly. I mean, it's not that we have to publicly punish, but how is no one held accountable?
So through the review
1
process, there was no single individual for whom a reprimand was warranted. There were a number of factors that were at play, including adjustments that were required to some of our standard operating procedures. So no determination was made at the time based on that.
Just my final
plan,
question.
and just to note that I look forward to the Auditor General's report on this in terms of her findings and any further recommendations she may have for us to
My
pursue.
final question would be, can Canadians feel secure in this stockpile now? Can they be secure that if something happens, some emergency happens, that we are ready for them?
Yes, is my short answer. Before the pandemic, we had, 34 employees, about 100 employees now. We, at the time, were investing $5 million per year. Before the pandemic, we are now, this year, to over $220 million in a much more expanded suite of medical countermeasures to be ready for any possible threat that the country could face, for which we are concerned in terms of the risk assessment that we undertake with our colleagues in the security family.
Thank you. I now go to the Liberals. Mr. Elson, for 5 minutes, please. For 6 minutes.
All right, thank you, Chair. Thank you all for coming. Very interesting. If I start asking a question that, just please remind me if I'm asking something that actually goes back into the in-camera material. Mr. That's what I mean.
So you're being careful.
I'm
Okay.
being yes, I'm
Good,
being
good,
careful,
good,
and
good.
so please point out if I'm asking something that should be in camera. Mr. Bailey stole my question about the locking. It was I was going to ask exactly the same thing.
Sorry, maybe just to note on the locking,
yeah.
in some cases, for example, that I have seen, there, just to say there's no, it's not that there are no locks. For example, there are some areas that are locked with,
Yeah.
locked. So there's grades of locking. And
Yeah.
I wanted to add that.
Okay, thank
additional
you,
point.
thank you. Are there, again, if this isn't in camera, is there are they now looking at sensors or something that might tell you that the door has become ajar? Because that's what I understand. The box expanded, the door came up, it was only the width of a piece of paper. Has that been rectified that would now be detected if this happened again?
So just to note that I won't get into specifics, and each freezer has its own technical specifications. Typically in the industry, an indicator of whether a door is open or not, and in most cases it's not a single door. There's a door within a door.
Yeah.
That's the industry standard. The indicator would be a temperature indicator on the front, typically on the front of the freezer. An alarm, and there's a direct, there's a 24/7 monitoring of the thermocouple that's within that fridge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. One of the things we found, I've practiced medicine for 20 years, 25 years. We, deal with error, and we will look at a critical incident and say, how did this happen? Was this a, huge bungle by one person? Was this a number of factors that came together to cause this to happen, which is more often the case. One of the things we've found in medicine is that we often will have input from other industries that are able to tell us what they can share with us, what they know from their incident analysis and quality improvement. For instance, the airline industry. It's very common practice now for the airline or the aviation industry to speak at medical conferences because they are very good at dissecting critical incidents and coming up with recommendations. Have you used input from other industries that could help to give you a better perspective on how to address these problems like this and prevent them from happening again?
So maybe I'll answer briefly and turn to my colleague, Ms. Mehta. So just to note that, yes, we have very strong relationships with the biomanufacturing and life sciences industry, and so are in regular contact with them in terms of the sharing of best practices. But I also would note that we also work closely with our international counterparts, including, for example, the 5 public health eyes. So we do regularly compare note to be ready to recognize and integrate best practices as they continue to advance. But I'll turn it to you, Stacey.
Thank you for the question. So we do consult regularly with industry to ensure that we are monitoring advancements in cold chain technology, that we are also looking at issues that others have had so that we're learning from those. And we do have very close relationships with our 5I counterparts stockpiles that provides us with an opportunity to discuss these types of events, best practices and lessons learned for people that are undertaking the same kind of business that we are.
All right. How much time do I have left, Madam Chair?
You have 1 minute and 29 seconds.
Thank you. I noticed that one of the things that will happen in the hospital environment too, in the quality improvement process, that there'll be a non-punitive sharing of information, so that people will, share frankly what happened and what their decisions were, without having what they've told us come back on them and have negative career or legal consequences. I mean, again, outside gross negligence or, deliberate malfeasance. But is there a process like that where someone can simply, is free to say, well, it's always been our practice that we do this, so that you get more frank sharing of information from all your staff?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So you've raised an excellent point, and for this reason, the NES quality management system is not punitive. It really does encourage employees to come forward when they identify an issue through appropriate reporting and escalation. If we start penalizing people for bringing problems forward, it creates a culture of silence. We want to avoid this, given the magnitude of the responsibility that we have.
All right, and I think that's my time.
Thank
That's
you very
it.
much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Okay. I'd like to suggest, before I go to the next person, PHAC is missing one French copy of the confidential documents. Mr. Major.
I'm sorry. I didn't look at it, didn't write on it, didn't do anything.
I gave mine back.
We're going to dock you 2 seconds on your next question.
Come on.
Now we go to Mr. Blanchette-Joncas for 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, how can Parliament have real control on the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile when there are large losses that are justified in the name of national security? There is no verification mechanism or sharing of information. So from the point of view of PHAC, are you satisfied with this level of transparency?
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question.
On a partager le plus d'informations possible.
Our commitment is to share as much information as possible. That is why we had the in-camera session, just to make sure that we would be able to share a maximum of information with the committee. For information at a higher security level, classified information, there are other means of engaging with Parliament, and we are always ready to answer questions, even in higher classification levels. Given the historical data and the corrective actions taken, can you really reassure us that Canada will not have to face another major issue in 6 months when it comes to the stockpile or other aspects?
Well, je pourrais vous s'assurer qu'on
I can reassure you that we learned from this incident, which the incident is a rare incident. And as discussed in the previous session, we implemented a lot of corrective actions. Most of these have been completed. There are some corrective and or preventive actions are close to being completed and closed and integrated into our systems, and would be happy to have an update meeting with you or to talk about the remaining recommendations. The Auditor General has also launched an inquiry or an investigation rather into this program, and we are looking forward to receiving their conclusions, observations, and recommendations, and we are always ready to improve. So I will continue with you. We talked about stockpile management and procedures, but when it comes to preparing for healthcare emergencies, you also need to have testing and validation and quick deployment capacity of different treatment options. Can you explain to us what national structure replaces the Canadian consortium for clinical trials?
je devrais vérifier.
I would need to check with my colleagues and come back to you with more information in writing, of course. Thank you. Canada is said to be better prepared today, but how does that go? How does that well, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and we saw the critical importance of quick clinical trials. So how do you explain the fact that there were cuts introduced to this, and this was a major deficiency during the COVID pandemic? So we want to reassure the Canadians that we are ready to face another pandemic.
Merci beaucoup pour la.
Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. There are different layers to this question, but if we are to focus on the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile, we remain in constant communication with our colleagues from the Security Committee to be informed and up-to-date about security risks. And with that information and with laser focus on our healthcare industry's capacity here in Canada and the supply chains across the world, we manage the stockpile in a way that reflects these risks. And we update our reserve, our stockpile, to make sure that we have the supplies to be able to respond to these risks. For instance, before the pandemic, we had only $5 million per year to manage these risks. Now we have $220 million in budget, and we had 168,000 square meters of space. Now we have about 1 million. So it's really been a step change compared to the pre-pandemic years. When you look at the assets that we have about $1.3 billion in assets. Thank you.
John, exactement. Okay, now we go to the next round. Mr. Epp, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. And the spirit that I ask these questions is in the same lessons learned spirit that we've been discussing so far. But I'm going to shift gears a bit and follow up on my OPQ 604, which is also passed in motion form at this committee, dealing with procurement and other things with respect to the NES. And I'll cite the OPQ references for later for your ease. And if you don't have the information at your fingertips, please just commit to forwarding the information to the committee. In OPQ 604 sub G, I asked which companies received contract renewals for PPE supply for the NES in 2023, 24, and 25. In your response, 3 companies were listed. My question, why was Medline not included in the list of vendors that received call-ups under Standing Order E6OPV 18MS00, given that Canada Buys, the website, shows Medline's contract was extended in August of 2025 and amended in September 2025?
Thank you for the question. So what you're seeing are the call-ups that the Public Health Agency would have done during that time. That contract or procurement vehicle is also available to all other government departments as well. So if you're seeing something on the website for Midline where they received a contract, it could have been for a different department or agency.
Okay. You basically state that standing offers under PHAC are not contracts. So, but can you say that under PHAC then extensions or amendments or administrative continuations of standing office are treating as ongoing suppliers, or are you saying that might be just to other departments?
If I understand the question correctly, so the Public Health Agency of Canada did leverage that supply arrangement to acquire product, and we've reported on the companies and the quantities that were procured through that vehicle. I can't speak for other government departments. They may have also leveraged that procurement vehicle to acquire supply.
Okay. How many PPE suppliers to the NES have been flagged through open source human rights reporting as having potential links to forced labor or child labor?
We don't have that information, but we can follow up on that.
Thank you. And I'll just give you some more to chew on. The Business and Human Rights Centers linked Thermo Fisher Scientific with knowingly selling their technology to Chinese police or surveillance companies. Now, Cardinal Health signed an attestation in 2025 that they do not have any forced labor in their supply chain, and they filed it with the Public Safety Canada. I'll note that Thermo Fisher Scientific stated that its kits are made for Chinese national DNA database and designed for Chinese population, including ethnic minorities like Uyghurs and Tibetans. So I look forward to a response back to the committee. With respect to 604 sub K, I asked about the government's rationale to continue to do businesses with multinational suppliers that failed to deliver during the pandemic. So were any multinational suppliers subject to penalties or contract terminations, suspensions, or exclusion from any future procurement as a result of pandemic-era non-performance?
Thank you for the question. If I understand your question correctly, it's whether or not we chose not to enter into procurement with any suppliers that we dealt with during the pandemic.
And I'll add a supplemental question. Is there any ongoing litigation where the federal government is the defendant because of the procurement practices?
I cannot speak to ongoing litigation. Matters may be before the courts. But we advertise our need for product through PSPC, Canada Buy and Sell, I can't remember the most recent name, and that is how we advance our request for procurements. Again, we ran through some of the requirements that we look for. We look for suppliers that are in good standing with medical or drug establishment authorizations. We look for suppliers that meet the requirements that we have collected from our 13 jurisdictions.
Thank you. If I can add a follow-up. Okay. Has PHAC been made aware of any falsified, fraudulent, or misleading laboratory test reports relating to gowns or other PPE submitted in connection with the NES during COVID-19 between 2020 and 2023? And if so, when did you become aware? Which suppliers were involved? What corrective enforcement actions were taken? And whether any contracts were suspended, terminated, or referred to law enforcement? And perhaps this is what is subject to litigation.
Thank you for the question. So During the pandemic, and I cannot speak to specific timeframes, but we did just have a bit of a 101 about the NEST quality management system. As part of that system, when we were advised that there may be potential quality issues with any of the product we were either acquiring or that we held, we undertook to quarantine that product until we could explore the quality further, either ourselves through the testing capabilities we have or through third-party independent testing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I go to Ms. Jessic for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all the officials with us today. As a former medical officer of health in charge of a public health unit serving some 1.2 million people, obviously we were extremely aware of the expensive vaccines that were stored in freezer units, etc. Just to say that not only did we have alarm systems, but of course we had a visual, personal inspection on a daily basis because technology can fail. So going back to the loss of the $20 million worth of product, could you clearly describe what your previous protocols were to ensure the safety of this product and the changes that you have now made that will hopefully, of course, mean that this will not occur again?
So, as just discussed in the in-camera session, we did do a full and comprehensive root cause analysis. I'm confident that we have addressed the root cause that was identified as a system issue. A contributing factor was our real-time 24/7 monitoring system for our refrigerator and freezer units. We have made enhancements to the oversight and the monitoring of those freezer units. The 24/7 monitoring still does occur. We have staff available to respond to those alarms on 24/7 basis. And we have increased oversight and management at the warehouse in the terms of personnel, as well as our regulatory affairs and quality assurance teams, and the teams that manage the equipment and maintenance.
You've heard some suggestions here. Mr. Bailey suggested a locking mechanism. MP Ailofson did also. I think it wasn't so much from a security point of view that those suggestions were made, but perhaps to keep the units airtight without any possibility of a door remaining even a sheet of a paper width opening. Has anyone else ever made a suggestion like that to you?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think I should also clarify that these units do have a locking mechanism on them. It's an industrial locking mechanism that ensures that the door stays closed. It's not like a regular refrigerator where there is no control point. And it's a standard type of mechanism that's used on many of these industrial freezers.
Okay, thank you. In terms of, we know the Auditor General is looking at this issue. Did you consult with other jurisdictions, like-minded jurisdictions, as to the various protocols that they have put in place to ensure that vaccines are safe?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. In this specific circumstance, no, we did not. We do, however, dialogue regularly with our federal, provincial, and territorial counterparts that manage similar product, that acquire product from our stockpile as well. And we take these opportunities whenever we do have to deploy product to walk through the protocols that we implement. We hear about the protocols that they have in place. That helps us refine our plans for deployment. As you could imagine, there's not only cold chain considerations, there are also regulatory considerations with these. So each one of these interactions does provide us with an opportunity to learn from one another in an open and frank exchange of information.
And perhaps I might add, having I'm in my month number 7 as president of the agency. I have met with my counterparts, particularly focused in on my G7 counterparts, and amongst the issues that we have been discussing is around our strategic stockpiles, and I look forward to those continued dialogues with and deepening those dialogues with our counterparts. For example, we look forward to a new joint action plan with the European CDC shortly, and we are signing a new memorandum of understanding with the United Kingdom where all of these issues are included. So just to say that at a higher level, with those conversations are happening with our strategic stockpiles is a key area of focus.
How much time left, Madam Chair?
You've got 13 seconds left.
I will cede that.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Blanchette-Jonca, you have 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before the Canadian Clinical Trial Consortium was terminated, or the funding, did you run any studies as to the potential impacts, or how the transition would be done, or how you would prepare for health emergencies? And with regard to Canada's national capacity of running clinical trials, did you look into what the impacts would be?
A number of il y a plusieurs organisations, je m'excuse.
I apologize. There are a number of organizations in the portfolio that are working on clinical trials, including Health Canada as the regulatory agency, and there's also the Health Research Institute that is engaged in research. So there are many players. But if we are to talk about the National Emergency Stockpile, we are the recipients of these innovations. Well, my question is more about whether you did a study before stopping the funding for the Canadian Consortium for Clinical Trials. If you don't have the answer right now, you can get back to me in writing. Yes, I can check this with my colleagues, those who are responsible. The federal government announced $250 million in investment to accelerate clinical trials, Madam Chair. So the Canadian federal government has announced $250 million in investment to accelerate clinical trials. Could you provide to the committee in writing a breakdown of this $250 million, each envelope, the program, the beneficiary, the exact amounts, and the deadlines for the funding to be provided? Thank you very much for the question, Madam Chair. Absolutely. I can follow up with my colleagues who are in charge of these files and get back to the committee. Thank you very much.
Major for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank the officials for being here today. I'll have to admit I am quite concerned of what we heard here in the briefing before this hour here. So I'll leave it at that. So the government has lost over $20 million in supplies from the National Emergency Stockpile. Was this a system error or an equipment error?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. So our root cause analysis and investigation did identify that it was an issue with our quality management system and the implementation of a standard operating procedure.
So it was a system error.
It was a system error with our quality management system, yes.
Thank you. Did the Public Health Agency have a validation master plan or a preventive maintenance program in place for the systems that lost over $20 million in supplies? Yes or no?
We are in the process of developing a validation master plan for the range of equipment that we hold. We did have, at the time of the event, an annual validation for all of our freezer units by an external and certified vendor to validate our units every year.
And just to note that we are on a timeline to conclude that by March 31st, 2026. So that's coming soon.
Okay. Was ineffective communication a contributing factor to the government's $20 million loss of product? Yes or no?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So communication was identified as a contributing factor between the teams. We discussed briefly the implication of multiple teams in this deviation, and the communication between those teams was identified as a contributing factor.
Okay. Did the Public Health Agency follow all guidance from the manufacturer of the identified freezer units prior to the $20 million loss? Yes or no?
Thank you for the question. The investigation did find that not all equipment specifications were followed.
So that's a no. Is a fully established quality culture consistently demonstrated throughout all operation activities for the National Emergency Stockpile? Yes or no?
The investigation found that we still had work to do in the implementation of a consistent quality culture. I will confirm that the activities taken to respond to the incident, notably the revisions and development of tools and tracking and retraining of the standard operating procedure in question, went a long way towards further developing and strengthening that culture.
Okay. Is the Public Health Agency of Canada aware of any potential hostile foreign actors who have attempted to access Canada's National Emergency Stockpile following the $20 million product loss? Yes or no?
We are aware, through a vendor that we work closely with, that there was interest from a foreign national in obtaining access to our warehouse location. They did not.
What country was that foreign actor from?
Thank you for the question. I cannot say. I do not have that in front of me right now.
And then can you report that back to the committee?
Yes. Thank you.
Minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay. Does the Public Health Agency take responsibility for the temperature deviation that resulted in a $20 million loss of products from the National Strategic Stockpile?
Yes, and we reported it in the public accounts.
Was the Public Health Agency responsible for the temperature deviation then?
There were a number of factors at play at the that led to the temperature deviation, and all of that occurred within the Public Health Agency of Canada.
So we had a bunch of miscommunication. We had they're still working on ongoing things. They're trying to get things done correctly now in PHAC and these freezers, and no one lost. There was no reprimands. There was no one fired over this at $20 million. And yet, it still seems to be its ongoing work, and I find it quite troubling that there was no one really taken to task on this. Or does the buck stop with the president?
That's a statement, Mr. Major, because you're over time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go to Miss Sidhu for 5 minutes, please. Sonia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is that, earlier we having conversation, there are lessons learned from COVID-19, and there's a steps we're taking when you answer some questions, weekly inspection, oversight the freezer. There's many steps you are taking. So is Canada prepared for if there's another pandemic happened? So I just would like to know.
Yes, we are in a very different place than where we were in 2019, and we are every day reviewing the threats that the country is facing and updating our approaches.
To follow up that, when there's a steps are taking, if you are taking any AI or digitalization, is there any arrangement is made to oversight on that, like, to data protection or AI threat or cyber security threat? So what kind of the steps you're taking on that?
From a cybersecurity perspective, we absolutely benefit from the enterprise-wide approach with Shared Services Canada and working with our colleagues at the Treasury Board, Secretariat, and the Communications Security Establishment. So there are, for example, sensors that they have in place from which we benefit as part of the enterprise-wide cybersecurity posture. My colleagues spoke about this extensively at the Public Accounts Committee just a few weeks ago, walking through all the enterprise-wide measures that are in place, and we are absolutely benefiting from that posture.
Collaboration with the provinces and territories also important. How is PHAC working with provincial and territories partners to clarify roles and responsibility and expectation around to the surge support?
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Chair, pardon me. There are a few things at play, I think, in terms of our collaboration with provinces and territories. So we benefit very much from the Public Health Network collaboration that has existed since the inception of the agency in 2005. And through that, there are a range of activities happening to ensure that we are better prepared in our respective areas going forward. So a few things that I would highlight in terms of our emergency planning. We have the Public Health Response Plan for emergencies and events that we've been modernizing with our provinces and territories to make sure that our mandates and roles and responsibilities are clear. And while there's also the Canadian Pandemic Preparedness Plan that is underway and will be endorsed by the Public Health Network shortly, that will fundamentally set out clear roles in the context of pandemic planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Budget pressures and competing priorities are a reality in today's life. How does PHAC ensure the investment in the NEST deliver value dollars while maintaining readiness on high-impact events?
I can kick off and then turn it over to you, Stacey. We prioritize our investments informed by discussions with our federal security and intelligence partners. We also are very much take into consideration the geopolitical context and the health of global supply chains. With all of those considerations, we then make strategic decisions as to where the highest priority investments are within the agency. And we work with our colleagues at Public Services and Procurement Canada to make sure that we have the best possible procurement in terms of value for money for Canadians, with the particular lens now with the Buy Canada policy framework. But I'll turn it over to Stacey if there's anything else.
Thank you for the question. Maybe the only thing I would add is that we, for those assets that are not drugs and that provinces and territories can procure and are effectively required to maintain their own stockpile and surge capacity of, we're that secondary surge piece. We work very closely with them to ensure that we are buying products that meet the performance and the technical specifications that will ensure it is easy to integrate that into the healthcare systems. So we had the example earlier with the NIOSH N95 respirators as an example. So that's just another layer about how we ensure that we're doing best value for dollar and ensuring that something can be deployed rapidly to support that surge need. Thank you.
Finished? Sonia?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And now we're going to go, we've asked the interpreters and we have room for one more round and then they must leave. So I begin with Mr. Epp sharing with Mr. Major for 5 minutes.
I'll just go first, Chair, and then I'll switch it over to Mr. Epp. I just want to get something clarified here today. So we've been hearing, and the media has been reporting that it's been an equipment failure, basically. That's been taken over. But what we learned here today was actually it was PHAC.
Be careful, Mr. Major. What you learned today?
Well, and we have testimony just in my last round
Yeah,
here.
okay.
That really, it was the actions and lack of actions from PHAC, the Public Health Agency, that really led to this deviation of temperatures and the loss of $20 million of product. And I just want to, I guess, confirm that with the agency here, and you're here today, like, you do take full responsibility for this, and this is a result of the $20 million loss was a result of basically miscommunications, lots of things reported, but a lack of action and proper management over the stock.
We take this loss very seriously, hence the immediate investigation into what happened. Yes, there were system failures within the Public Health Agency of Canada. There are also technical equipment-related modifications that are also required in terms of the what the factoring determined. So there are multiple levels of multiple factors that led to this, but ultimately, yes, it's Public Health Agency of Canada that is responsible, and that is why we reported it in the public account.
Thank you. Mr. Epp.
Thank you. I'm going to continue back to the OPQ 604 and pick up actually on a comment you made earlier in the meeting that as one of the lessons learned that PHAC is working toward domestic long-term contracts. So in OPQ 604 sub C, I asked how much the federal government spent on reshoring and supporting domestically sourced PPE between March 2020 and December 2022. PHAC's response listed 5 contracts. Since, however, Precision ADM acquired Roswell Downhole Technologies in August of 2021, were the standing offers awarded to these 2 entities presented as separate recipients, or were they part of a single corporate group? And if you don't have that, just respond in writing.
Thank you for the question. I don't have that here. We can
Okay.
respond in writing.
Following up on that, in light of the appointment of BDO Canada Limited as the receiver in May of 2024 for Precision ADM, PADM Medical, and Roswell Downhole Technologies, what due diligence or financial risk assessments were conducted prior to awarding funds to companies that later became insolvent or entered receivership?
Thank you for the question. I will note that portion of the response was actually provided by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. So we'd be happy to refer that question to our colleagues.
Thank you. Has either PHAC or ISET conducted any post-pandemic evaluation of PPE reshoring initiatives to determine whether these investments reduced reliance on foreign suppliers during or after the pandemic?
Thank you for the question. Again, this would be a question for our colleagues, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. We'd be happy to refer that.
Further to that, did any post-pandemic reviews identify the loss of domestic PPE manufacturers as a risk to future emergency readiness?
We'd have to follow up on that and get back to the committee.
Okay, I'm going to flip over to sub E on that same 604. What was
57 seconds.
Thank you. What was the original procurement value of the expired PPE currently being warehoused by item type at the time it expired?
Thank you for the question. Just to confirm, it is what is the current estimated volume and value?
The original
expired?
procurement value of
original
what's presently expired.
The assets were originally procured at an overall cost of approximately $150 million.
And that's presently expired. What inventory management systems does PHAC use to track expiry dates, and what measures are in place to prevent large volumes of PPE from expiring in storage?
Thank you for the question. So we use a proprietary warehouse management solution, an inventory management solution within the Public Health Agency. Our president described some of the efforts that we take to have non-expired product used before it expired. We have options available to us that involve transfer to other government departments or other levels of government. Then we proceed to sale, and then we proceed to donation. So we have been active on all those fronts. Again, we have no direct connection to the healthcare industry in Canada. So through those efforts, we endeavor to divest as much as we can before it expires. But these are significant volumes that we're talking about.
Right, and we're presently paying storage in warehouses for expired PPE. You mentioned that you don't have any direct connection. So your sales, sorry?
You are going over time.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now we go to Ms. Chi for 5 minutes, please, Maggie.
Thank you, Chair. To Public Health Agency, could you confirm for the committee that the recent loss doesn't compromise our ability to respond to public health emergencies? And when you responded, that it was restocked to its full level?
That is correct. There's no risk, and we have restocked the loss fully.
Thank you. And going forward, because there are some questions and discussions about mitigation strategies and plans. Could you confirm that this matter will not happen again, this specific incident?
Absolutely, a number of actions have been taken. Most of the action plan has been completed relative to what the investigation recommended. So most of those actions are taken, and no, we can't ever say 100% all risks can be eliminated. That is very difficult. Very difficult to say 100%, but we're in a very, very different place than where we were, and we're very comfortable with the significant changes that have been made.
Thank you so much. And for the benefit of the committee, can you explain how PHAC assesses and manages risk within the stockpile today, specifically around how decisions are made about redundancy and substitution when a particular product is lost, how demand modeling and scenario planning are used to determine what constitutes an acceptable level of risk, and how PHAC ensures that replenishment timelines align with realistic threat assessments?
Thank you for the question. So in defining the requirements that help us decide what we stock and how much we stock, we first start with threat and risk assessments, and I'm talking more predominantly the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear events that we plan for. We conduct threat and risk assessments with our security and intelligence partners. That helps us inform scenarios that they should be considering and that we should be considering to respond to. Once we've looked at the different scenarios, we then determine how many people might we need to treat for those types of scenarios, and that helps us decide how many treatment courses effectively we have. We then look at the range of available medical countermeasures, and we effectively set acquisition and divestment plans based on those. As it relates to something like pandemic preparedness, we're currently working with provinces and territories, as we did during the pandemic, to conduct modeling to identify what would be a national target, for example. How many masks should Canada have to be prepared to respond for that surge until supply becomes available if there are supply constraints? And that is work that is being undertaken in support of the Canadian Pandemic Preparedness Plan that will be delivered, is anticipated to be delivered this year, to help us collectively as a country define those targets and then assign a surge requirement for the NES as well as for provinces and territories.
Thank you so much. And Chair, how much time do I have left?
1 minute, 46 seconds.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So this incident, as we've learned, has really focused the attention on, the storage and monitoring on NES. And given that, COVID really demonstrated the risk to our critical medicine supply. So maybe just opine on it a little bit. I don't have a lot of time left, whether or not, what your thoughts are on our supply chain resilience for critical medical countermeasures.
Thank you for the question. So supply chains for critical medical countermeasures are extremely complex. one product may be sourced from multiple different locations. The source material, maybe even the capsule that encases it, might come from a different supply chain. What we are doing is working very closely with partners in Health Canada who manage drug shortages, with Health Emergency Readiness Canada and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, who are seized with supply chains and resiliency around supply chains, so that we can collectively better understand these and build resiliency into our plans and our systems for response.
Thank you so much. And those are my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, point of privilege.
Pardon?
Point of privilege.
Yes.
Given the language difficulties and hiccups we had at one point, could we have consent to give Monsieur Blanchet-Jeancas 5 minutes for this round?
As I said earlier on, we have a time limit with the interpreters.
Okay.
And so we are
if that
going
is
to be
within
barely making the time
Okay.
they must leave.
All right.
Not this time around, I'm sorry.
Point d'ordre, Madame la Présidente.
Point of order, Chair. Would you be able to explain why for the second hour the time distribution wasn't similar to the first hour?
According to what was agreed by this committee, the block gets the first 6 every 1 hour. The block gets 6 minutes. Then it gets 2.5 after that. When we have a full 2 hour in which there are not 2 separate hours, the block is given the extra 6 in a second round to make up for that. This time, you had 2 6-minute rounds. In the first round in camera and in the first round in the second hour, the block got 6 minutes. So this is going, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the interpreters have to leave at a certain time. And given that we're going to be probably just going over that time every time we sort of take time off, we're going to have to end without somebody finishing their time as it is.
Donc, je veux juste bien comprendre, pour la deuxième heure,
So just to understand, for the second hour, we have 6 minutes, and the second round is 2 minutes and 30.
okay. Donc,
It has always been that way.
donc l'entente, la première heure n'est pas similaire à la deuxième.
So the first hour's arrangement is not the same as the second hour's.
Each hour has an arrangement of 6 minutes for everybody, then 5-5, 2.5, 5-5. That was agreed by this committee at the very beginning. Okay, and so the reason sometimes we do not stop, we just go a full 2 hours. Everyone agreed to give the block that chance of a second hour, 6 minutes. That's why when we're meeting for 2 full hours with no break, there were 2 6 minutes allotted to the block. This time, you got 6 minutes in the in-camera first hour and 6 minutes in the public hour. So the block got their 2 6 minutes. But as we're saying, somebody's going to have to give up their time because we have to finish on the dot at 5:50. And we're cutting that out right now. So we have Ms. Chi, you've just finished? Yes. And I'm going to go to Mr. Blanchet-Jeancas, 2.5.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je poursuis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll continue with my questions. In the aftermath of the shortcomings observed during the COVID pandemic, Quebec decided to take things up themselves. So we created our own strategic stockpile in medication and other supplies. So why does the federal government still keep the decision-making and funding authority when it comes to NES rather than transferring these resources to the government of Quebec to show its management capacity?
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question. A lot of provinces have their own emergency strategic stockpiles, and the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile's role is to serve as a backstop for these jurisdictions. This is the case for a number of provinces where they made the decision during the pandemic, before the pandemic, to have their own reserves. But what is the NES capable of doing that the Quebec's stockpile is not capable of doing? Well, just to say that for instance, in a given situation, an X jurisdiction's analysis with regard to their procurement, if the real risk is higher than what they used in their procurement procedure, then NES would kick in, for instance. So before the pandemic, we had 3 to 5 requests from provinces, but now this year, to date, we had more than 40 requests from provinces and territories.
Thank you for the question. There are also certain medical countermeasures, like the drugs that we discussed earlier in the in-camera session, that simply are not available to anyone other than national governments. So in those circumstances, we are the sole provider in Canada for Canadians.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go to Mr. Epp, and the Conservatives and Liberals have agreed to cut their 5-minute slots to 2.5. 2.5, please, Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go back to the value of the expired PPE that we have that we're presently paying storage on. I think you said 150 million, something like that. In my research for this, my understanding is we use, and don't quote me exactly, but 6 million hospital gowns in our regular system across our hospital system in Canada. Why would the PHAC operating the NES not strike? I heard your testimony earlier where you have a system where you try and dispose of expiring or about to expire stock. Why would you not set up a rotating system through our NES and then at least, a year before the gowns expire, because they are photosensitive, and run them through our system so that we aren't paying storage? What is the barrier there?
Thank you for the question. So what you've described is the exact model that some jurisdictions have chosen to put into place. For that reason, we do anticipate we're exploring different operational management tools and operational delivery models, for example. So we are looking at vendor-managed solutions, which kind of describes what you've just described there, is that we would effectively contract with a vendor who would provide us with supply, but rotate that through the healthcare system so that we're not effectively sitting on a stockpile of gowns. So some jurisdictions have chosen to implement that model, and we are learning from those experiences.
Okay, we went into the pandemic. We went into the pandemic with an expired stockpile, or relatively expired, and now we're coming out of the pandemic with an expired stockpile. So that's why I don't understand how through that lesson why the lessons weren't learned a bit faster.
Thank you for the question. So we've been discussing the expired stock that we have and that we are responsibly life cycle managing.
Right.
So that volume has significantly decreased between your two OPQs. We do have capacity today across the range of personal protective equipment. So we have masks, surgical masks, respirators, gowns, and gloves within the stockpile that are not expired and available for use.
With the procurement system, you listed your three criteria, with domestic or an indigenous source being one of them. I assume cost is in there as well. How do you rank them? How do you weight the 3 criteria that you listed earlier?
Thank you for the question. The ranking really does consider the contracting vehicle. So depending on what contracting mechanism or procurement mechanism we would apply, there would be criteria that we would develop with PSPC as our contract authority, and we would apply those criteria. So it might vary in different contracting exercises.
How significant is price?
I would say that price is definitely a factor. I would say that diversity of supply is also a factor. So we may choose to, in the future, contract not with only one supplier, but multiple suppliers, so that we have diversity in our supply. And again, quality. Quality is a key component.
Well over time. Thank you. I go to Mr. Erfson for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been a lot of information that's come around, and this is something a little off what we were talking about before. It's still in, of course, your mandate. We know that in 2025, once again, we had quite a devastating forest fire season. This caused a lot of problems with, respiratory ailments and other hazards to the people in the locations and far beyond. So, what role did NES play in Canada's response to that?
So I would argue this is directly linked to the NES. I wouldn't say it's off topic, but just to say that just this last wildfire season, we responded to 3 separate requests for assistance, deploying over 27,000 units of emergency social service assets. So in addition to everything that you've heard today in terms of medical devices, drugs, we also, in this case, provided 5,300 blankets, 5,000 cots, 4,800 mattress rolls, 3,200 pillows, 6,100 face cloths, and 3,400 towels. And I can tell you, those requests came in and deployments were moving within hours to be able to respond to the very serious situation.
1 minute.
As well as a mini clinic, which was also
1
deployed
minute,
during
Doug.
the wildfire season. The agency engages more broadly within wildfire response in other areas too.
All right, and that yes, I have no further questions.
You have no further questions. Okay, then I'm going to borrow your extra quick minute and ask a question. Given we're looking at possibly other pandemics, and given that you got a lot of your stuff from the United States, what's going to happen now that there's a difference with the CDC with regard to vaccines and to the United States with regard to vaccines? Is that going to impact your ability to get supply when you need it?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. We right now, one of the reasons that we stockpile some of these drug medical countermeasures that we've been talking about over the last hour and a bit is because you need to have them on hand when the emergency arrives. You can't wait to place an order when the emergency occurs. So for that reason, we have stockpiles. We have built some capacity to bridge any supply constraints that may arise. And we work very closely with our colleagues in the United States who also acquire these same drug products, as well as other Five Eye colleagues.
We are diversifying our supply sources of, of vaccines. And so that is evolving.
Good. That's what I wanted to know, because the CDC is not stockpiling anymore because it's not having the same vaccine protocols that you used to have in policies. So I just wondered if you were getting it from somewhere else.
Yes, we're looking at other sources, and we're looking at, just from a security of supply chain, precursor products that will lead us, that will help us in terms of domestic production, for example.
I want to thank the witnesses for coming and once again sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us. Some of the questions were difficult, I know, and a bit tough, but you guys can take it. So I want to thank you all, and I would like to move that this meeting be adjourned.